A thick jungle, rain that falls sideways, and some really messed up stuff. That's right, it's time for the top 10 messed up things that happened in the Vietnam War, Part 3. Number 10. Third-party involvement. You'd be forgiven if you thought the Vietnam War was a really bad war between the United States and Vietnam. Literally every book, movie, or depiction of the late 60s conflict is GIs in green walking through the jungle brush as Huey helicopters buzz over the tree canopies. Chaos surrounding as a Rolling Stones or other influential song from the era plays in the background. The camera pans out to show how thick the jungle is, as the soldiers are always looking for someone named Charlie. Wonder if they found him. Forrest Gump jokes aside, good movie, go see it. Yes, that is the Vietnam War for the US, but there were actually a few other countries involved, more than you might think. The Soviet Union and China were 100% supporting Vietnamese communists. The French years prior were trying to claim back an old colony, and Australia also sent soldiers to support the effort. And perhaps most strangely, South Korea sent soldiers to aid South Vietnam, so the same thing didn't happen to them. That's just a crazy mix, isn't it? Number 9. Are you done? If you ever find yourself getting captured by spooky, scary communists, maybe you should remember Doug Hegdal, a sailor who was blown overboard by a ship gun and washed ashore to probably the worst shore to wash up on in the 1960s. Maybe that or a nude beach full of hippies, I digress. Doug eventually found himself in a super friendly POW camp. Doug knew he was going to be in some trouble, and if he didn't think fast, was going to be subjected to torment that isn't appropriate for any YouTube or TV show on air. So, what did Doug do? A daring escape, you say? Eliminated all his enemies from the stealth that only a cardboard box could provide? Hang upside down with tri-light night vision goggles and wait for guards to walk by? No, my stealth gaming friends. He played dumb. Very dumb, in order to convince the enemy that he wasn't worth very much, so that in theory they would let him go. Not convinced, the Viet Cong tried to get Doug to spew propaganda. Doug made a 5-head play and pretended he couldn't read. He pretended to be 3-head. After many efforts, the Viet Cong declared him the incredibly stupid one. He was eventually released back to the US, where he gave some intel on the Viet Cong that he remembered over his time locked up, which he remembered to the tune of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Doesn't get any more American than that. Old MacDonald had a farm. Yeah, okay, anyway. Number 8, 360 all scope. Remember the days of Modern Warfare 2? Remember hitting those early spawn shots on high rise with the intervention? Yes, me too. Times have changed, and although the days of waking up early on Saturday morning to rip a little Call of Duty while your parents fight in the next room may be gone for me, they are not forgotten. I wasn't the best sniper out there, but I could hit a shot or two. However, no energy drink fueled YY ladder stall compares to the White Feather. Meet Carlos Hathcock, a sharpshooter from the Vietnam War whose accuracy would have Robin Hood questioning his bowstrings. He is credited with taking down a lot of enemies from quite a staggering distance away. However, his biggest claim to fame would be his Robin Hood splitting arrow moment. One day in the Vietnam jungle, he spotted an enemy sniper and terminated the threat. The thing is that Hathcock's bullet went through the enemy's scope and ended his sniping career. That's one heck of a shot. Mom, get the camera! Number 7, tall courage. Richard Flaherty was unusual to most US soldiers deployed in Vietnam at the time. He was a short king, measuring in just short of 5 feet, which was the US requirement for soldiers at the time. His training proved that while he was short, he was just as effective as the other soldiers. Nicknamed the Mighty Mouse and the Giant Killer when in the field, his courage and efforts would see him join the famous 101st Airborne, where he was sent on search and destroy missions in the thick jungle brush. His efforts would eventually earn him a Silver Star, and would wind up in the very tough yet mysterious Green Berets. Never judge a book by its cover. Number 6. Yeah, of course I am the American. Larry Thorne was a soldier and a great leader for US forces training civilians in Vietnam. Distinguished with medals and wasn't afraid to get dirty. He helped defend a base from a Vietnamese attack, and if he wasn't there, it most likely would have gone FUBAR. However, that's not what's so messed up about Mr. Thorne. Larry was hiding something rather interesting. Being a little bit older, it made sense that he had been in the military for a while. However, it wasn't the US Army. Larry had fought in 2 other armies previously. The Finland Army, which was his home against the Soviets in the Winter War, and more disturbingly, fought with the German Waffen SS. Yeah, I am an American and I have no prior actions that would cause you to have any suspicion. Yeah, Sadly for the man with all that experience, he perished in a helicopter crash in 1965. His body was recovered years later and was given full military honors when buried. You never know who you're standing beside. Number 5. Welcome to the Suck. Meet Roy Benavidez, a soldier with so much courage and bravery, I don't even have a joke for it. A man who, after being severely injured and told he was never going to walk again, walked out of the hospital 6 months later. He then joined the very tough and elite Green Berets, where he went on a mission and was stuck in hell for 6 hours. A group of Green Berets, including himself, had been pinned down by enemy fire, and it wasn't looking too good. Most of the group, unfortunately, was severely injured or simply just not living anymore. Roy himself had sustained bullet wounds and had been stabbed by an enemy bayonet. He eventually made it out barely alive, and when the doctors got to him, they said he wouldn't make it. So with his last breath of life, he spat in the doctor's face to show he was still somehow holding on. When you look at the full story, it's crazy. It's so messed up. I left a lot of the gruesome details out, but definitely check that one out. Number 4. Hideouts. Officials say the Vietnam War officially ended in 1975. Officially. However, for many, there was much fighting to do. For Black Americans, the civil rights movement may have changed things, but there was still a long way to go. Vietnam had a communist utopia to unite and build, and many people simply had to recover from the casualties of war, injuries both physical and mental. However, for one father and son duo, this fighting lasted decades, literally. Ho Van Tan ran into the jungle with his 1-year-old son in 1972 after his village was destroyed by American bombs in Operation Rolling Thunder. Fearful that it would be the end of him and his family, he hid from the war. He hid for 40 years and wouldn't come out of hiding until 2013, when he was in his 80s and his son was in his 40s. The men were frail, malnourished, and had severely rotten teeth. Can you imagine what it would be like to live without any technology for 40 years and then to come out of the jungle and find smartphones everywhere? It's just such a polarizing idea. Messed up, man, messed up. Number 3. High times in Vietnam, man. Peter Lemon was one of many soldiers in Vietnam whose efforts defending a US base with a machine gun and his bare hands earned him a Medal of Honor. Thing is, Peter Lemon wasn't a Yankee, he was a Canuck, born in Toronto. Becoming a patriot American and joining the war was part of his dream for some reason. What's so messed up about Peter, you ask? It's not about being Canadian in the American Army and really just doing very well. We're cool, I promise. But rather, it's his illusions of him fighting the war that quickly deteriorated. If you were around in the 60s and 70s, you probably took part in a little thing called grass. To say it was everywhere was an understatement, but I mean, hey, these guys were at war. They needed a break. His defense of the US base, while under the influence of the devil's lettuce, is where this point is getting to. Number 2, save the trees, man. Like I've mentioned before, the jungles of Vietnam were just as much as an enemy for the US soldiers as the communists were. Agent Orange was used to help unjungle the jungle, but it wasn't instant working and it took a few days to really kick in. Bulldozers were sent in after to help remove the trees. This for the US wasn't fast enough and they needed a better answer. So it was time to militarize some serious logging equipment. A 97-ton tree crusher that made trees 50 feet tall crumble like saplings. However, the machine was prone to breaking down and did get stuck in the mud. And in case you didn't know, towing a 97-ton vehicle out of the mud while being fired upon is not easy. No thank you, I'll pass. Number 1, actually Apocalypse Now. Yes, the movie. Go watch the movie, the original, not the Redux. You can skip the Redux. Well, based on the book Heart of Darkness, the movie is based around the Vietnam War, but if you ask me, it does a better job of getting the themes across in a more digestible setting. You can take the movie in many different ways, but even at face value as a movie in the Vietnam War, it's insane. It does a great job of showing the horrors of war, the insanity, PTSD, hypocrisy, and the gore that was the Vietnam War. A war that would leave America slightly embarrassed, as this was a time of great change all over the world. Couldn't recommend it enough though, seriously, go watch it. The horror. That's gonna wrap it up for me today, guys. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe here at Bumblebee. And if you too want to get to the Colonel's compound, then check out my socials linked down below. I've been your host, Big Ched, and stay sweet, my little honeybees.